This podcast is brought to you by the Heldridge Hotel, New Brunswick's only 4-star hotel and a preferred hotel of Rutgers football fans. The Heldridge helps you make the most of your game day weekend, providing premium accommodations in the cultural heart of downtown New Brunswick. Restaurants, bars, theaters, parks, museums, and more are only steps away. Whether you're traveling alone or with a large group, book your stay at the Heldridge and make the most of your game day weekend. Visit theheldridge.com today.
George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie Wolves is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie Wolves,
You can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it, it's cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politti and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. Politti here, Virginia Tech Game Week, programming note. We're going to have 2 podcasts this week, one to, I don't know, we'll figure out what we're going to talk about today. And later in the week, we will preview Virginia Tech, and that's going to be our regular season schedule for the rest of the way. How you guys doing? How was your weekend?
Mine was pretty uneventful. Nothing really happened. What about you, Pat? How was your weekend?
Listen, you guys know I'm true Jersey, as you can see, right? Here at NJ.com, that's what we are. So, of course, I had to go see Springsteen at See Here Now Festival, but because of our steep Rutgers salaries, I couldn't afford the secondhand ticket on StubHub, which were going for like $500, $700 anyway. So long story short, I booked a ticket on the Dauntless, a fishing boat out of Point Pleasant Beach, to go watch the show from the Atlantic Ocean. Right? In theory, a great idea.
Well, wait, how close would the boat get to the stage? I'm a little confused.
It was awesome. The sound was really good. We were probably 200 yards out from the beach, but the water was so rocky and windy that 50% of the boat got seasick, and one woman unfortunately had a medical emergency, so the boat went back to the dock 8 songs into the show. And diehards like myself and another NJ.com guy, Brian Boble, who's seen him 8 times on this tour already, were just devastated. So long story short, should have been an amazing night. It wasn't. But we're here to make it right on the Rutgers Rant, I guess.
What was the level of before we get started, what was the level of the medical emergency here? Like, it would have to be something pretty serious.
I don't want to violate any HIPAA laws or anything here publicly.
It'll come out on the report on Saturday.
There was an ambulance at the dock when we got back, and she was fainting apparently on the boat. So it was unfortunate.
I mean, so the seasickness, were they like yakking over the side of the boat?
There was a lot of puking, and there was puke all over the bathroom. People puking over the rails. It was wild, man. And like just going out, like from cruising to Asbury, felt like I had 20 beers, right? But I was completely sober.
This is why I don't do anything. Like when there's a question, what are you doing this weekend? Just gonna do a crossword puzzle.
But this is why everything lined up. It was the bye week. I was like, this is the perfect thing to do during the bye week.
I'll say this. Even when I saw the pictures of being on the beach, even that seemed like a lot.
That's what I heard.
A lot of people.
That's what I heard.
Sandy. I don't know.
Hey, you did play Sandy. Great song.
Did he play Sandy? What songs did you? So at what point was it like Born to Run as the boat is pulling off, or what would be the perfect?
So he started off. If you're not a Springsteen fan, fast forward. If you're a Springsteen loyalist, like I think a lot of people
listen to this podcast and not be a Springsteen.
Exactly. So
on this podcast, I'm not a Springsteen loyalist, but anyway.
Oh my god.
Anyway, keep going, Pat.
So he really came out with a bunch of shockers to start this. He played Thundercrack off tracks, which he probably hasn't played in 30 years. He played like 4 or 5 songs off Greetings from Asbury Park, I think as a tribute to playing in Asbury Park. So we turned around if you pull up the set list, we turned around at Tougher Than the Rest, which was song number 8 out of 27.
Apparently because someone on the boat wasn't tougher than the rest. All right, moving on. I'm sorry about that, Pat. That's terrible.
All good. Rutgers can make it right this week. We'll see. Yeah, hopefully
yes, good. You
hopefully no one sitting next to me on the plane to Virginia Tech this week gets motion sickness. Otherwise, that's just how it's going to go.
All right. Well, so that's the week. That's the weekend. Brian and I were watching football while you were doing this. At least.
Well, this was Sunday night. I watched a lot of football on Saturday.
Watched a lot of football. All right. Let's talk some football. Virginia Tech, and this is we should begin with that because they're the team that Rutgers is playing this weekend in the biggest game of the season until the next biggest game of the season. And I want to present this to you guys and see what you think, because I was a little surprised at the line. I guess it was 3 to open. Virginia Tech by 3, moved to 4. I've seen. Is that still the case?
You have it backwards. I think it opened at 4.5 on some books, and it went back to 3, unless it's moved back to 4.
Okay, gotcha.
And now just to get this out of the way, if they were undefeated and this game was at night, it would have been 10.5. But I guess we'll never know what would happen.
We'll never know.
I just think it's crazy. Virginia Tech, we're going to talk about this. They don't look that great. The game's at 3:30, kind of a bland mood, and they're still 3-point favorites. I mean, one would really think that if the conditions were even better for Virginia Tech, the number would be even higher. I'm just saying.
I'm sure. Just throwing it out there. The point I was trying to make, and it seems like that in college football, more than any sport, we have a very hard time adjusting our preseason expectations. Like, people thought Florida State was going to be really good, and then Florida State lost the opener, and they're like, it's the opener, Ireland, whatever. And then they lost the next game. And only now are people like, holy shit, Florida State stinks, right? Only now is that light bulb going on. And I wonder if this is the same thing. Virginia Tech was supposed to contend for, the ACC title, supposed to be one of the better teams, had everybody coming back. All right, they have not looked good in any of their games, including this one against Old Dominion, against an 0-3 Old Dominion team, 14-10 at halftime, gave up 243 rushing yards to Old Dominion. Like, I just don't like, and I wonder if I'm looking at Rutgers against 2 bad opponents and just, and I'm making the mistake of being lulled into that a little bit, but I don't think Virginia Tech's very good. They weren't very good last year. Rutgers beat them last year. Tell me I'm wrong.
That same script that you just laid out perfectly is what happened last year. Rutgers ran all over Virginia Tech, right? Wore them down in the fourth quarter, and that's I think very representative of how this is going to go. I can't prove you wrong on this one. I think you're spot on.
We're doing the transitive property here and kind of assigning results from different games to how good a team is, but I do think a lot of things are in Rutgers' favor. I'm just saying, Virginia Tech played at Old Dominion, didn't look great. They were down at halftime against Marshall. They lost to Vanderbilt, who has since lost to Georgia State, right? So that even that loss looks worse now. But you could also look at it from the Rutgers vantage point. Yes, they won 2 games pretty handily against a middle-of-the-pack FCS team and maybe the worst team in FBS, right? So it's not like they beat any reputable teams to make themselves look better. I will say, though, that I think it's pretty fair to say at this point, Virginia Tech is not the juggernaut we thought they were. But it's still Rutgers going on the road to a hostile environment for a game they probably need at this point, right? Like, you lost the Vanderbilt game. You got to get a big win against the Rutgers to have a big non-conference win to really live up to your preseason expectations. I think they'll be juiced up. I wouldn't have been surprised if Rutgers was slightly favored. I'm not exactly surprised they're slightly underdogs. I think this will be a close game either way. But Pat's right. The formula is there for Rutgers to just kind of run all over them, drag things out to the fourth quarter, and kind of wear them out.
Two things I want to add about this Virginia Tech thing. I do the rankings every morning, every Monday morning. If you see it, Virginia Tech's average across the 4 polls that I tracked is 35 and Rutgers, or 45, and Rutgers is 44. So that just goes exactly to that. This is really, really just a pick'em game, and the perception of Virginia Tech is fascinating too, because the computer models love them. Like, they're in the 30s in FPI, I think 35, which is an ESPN poll computer ranking, but they're 65 with the CBS writers. So it's an interesting variation of what is the true Virginia Tech perception.
That's interesting, because isn't that the same thing for Rutgers? Like, I've seen some of the advanced numbers, the PFF stats are I think Rutgers is much better than the world seems like. Even us, like the eye test, right?
Rutgers is ranked second overall in Pro Football Focus's grades because they played. And here's another great advanced stat from ESPN's FPI. They have Rutgers as the 133rd. Or their strength of schedule is ranked 133rd out of 134 teams. So that shows you all you need to know about Howard and Akron.
Right. I think that I know people are going to ask us later on about PFF grades. That's kind of my thing with PFF is that, yes, Rutgers has really high grades because they played really well. Their offensive line played really well, but it doesn't seem like PFF adjusts for the quality of the opponent, right? Like I think, for example, I mean, you can in basketball, right? I don't know if it's harder to do it in football, but like Ken Palm adjusts for the opponent. Gotcha. PFF, like Rutgers destroying Akron at home should not hold the same value as Texas going to Michigan, for example, and winning there. That's why PFF is very valuable for its stats. It has very strong stats that you can't really find much other places, pressures and all that good stuff, accuracy, depth of passing, all that stuff is good. I always take the grades with a massive grain of salt because there's no real adjustment for the quality of the opponent. And that kind of, I think we could all agree here. Rutgers is not the second best team in the country. It does not have the best offensive line in the country. It probably doesn't even come close, right? So I think that's just a bit silly, honestly.
I think it does have a very good offensive line, though. I mean, I think there's a chance it can be very good. I know it's got one of the best running backs in the country. I believe that. I've seen that over a season and a half now, and that's the case. I mean, there's just, and I think the defense is going to be very good, and that to me is still the biggest question going into this, because when you have a rushing quarterback like Virginia Tech does, a guy who can get to the edge. Is this defense going to be up to that task? And that still is the one thing that keeps me from thinking that, this could be a game that Rutgers wins, not easily, but certainly wins, it wins without much of a scare, where you're sitting there at the fourth quarter thing. And that's the fact, can they stop drones on defense?
Is Tyron Powell back? That's the big question to me. Mm-hmm. He's going to make a huge difference in stopping a running quarterback, just schematically knowing where to be. Daryl Jabomi had a great first game. The second game, he clearly struggled in knowing where to be, allowed Akron's quarterback to kind of rush out and have some space because he misjudged an angle. Tyron Powell probably won't do that, and he'll make a big difference in getting to drones. Will Wesley Bailey be back? Will he be able to help them contain the quarterback? Will he be able to rush the quarterback? That'll make a big difference. And then Troy Rainey, if he's back at defensive tackle, he had a good training camp. Will he be able to kind of help them get some more interior pressure to block out those running lanes down the middle of the line? I think those are the three big questions, because otherwise, if you don't get those three guys back, you have to hope that guys like Aaron Lewis, Daryl Jabomi, the back end, they all kind of step up and each make important plays, which against Akron and Howard, I haven't really seen that. And it's kind of a big ask to make them do that, ask them to do that against Virginia Tech on the road.
Yeah. All right. Let's, we're going to come back, obviously spend the entire next show breaking this down in greater detail. I do want to talk about the rest of the action this weekend, because it's sort of fascinating. Like if you watch the Big Ten action, and I've seen it both, I've seen the opinion both ways. Like you can look at some of the games and say, oh, Rutgers' schedule is easier than I thought. But if you look at the back end you're like, oh, maybe Rutgers' schedule is harder than I thought. And it's funny because when we ask for questions from the texting service, I've got a little bit of both. Wisconsin loses a quarterback. UCLA, I watched half that game, looks brutal. Washington loses the Apple Cup against Washington State. But then Nebraska, Minnesota, Illinois, lesser degree Maryland, but still, Michigan State. Those teams look good. So do you think which one are you leaning toward, fellas? Is it a good news on the schedule being easier than you thought, or bad news and being harder than you thought?
I thought the back end of the Rutgers schedule was going to be a cakewalk in the preseason, right? I thought like that, right? They get to Minnesota, UCLA's there kind of towards the end, Maryland, Illinois, like you said, like I thought those were all setting up to be really, really, really Rutgers would be favored in all these games. Maybe they still will be, whatever. But yeah, so I think trending towards being bad news. I would say. I think those teams are showing a little bit more than I thought. So yeah, I would say, but I still, and we said Nebraska was going to be a tough game to start, right? Like we pinpointed that one from the start. So yeah.
I agree with Pat wholeheartedly. Nebraska is still going to be tough. I still think it's maybe the toughest road game they play outside of USC. Wisconsin losing their quarterback is big. They're not really a quarterback-centric team. It's not like this is a team that was throwing for 400 yards a game, 3 passing touchdowns. They're still going to be meat and mashed potatoes, run the ball down your throat, play great defense, win the game 21-12 or whatever. So while it impacts them, I'm not sure this is a complete game changer there. Maryland has looked great. Really, I think they looked great against Virginia. They have a great offense. Their quarterback is not a huge downgrade from Talia Tagovailoa, and they have a stud wide receiver in Ty Felton, one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten. He's been very impressive.
He carved up Rutgers last year too. He was unbelievable against Rutgers. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and he shows he can do that. It's not just the quarterback. He's the real deal, no matter who's throwing the ball to him.
No question.
And then the only team that has beaten Maryland and looked good against them is Michigan State, who also looks really, really good and is no longer that kind of. I didn't pencil it down as a win, but it looked to me like maybe the easiest road game Rutgers had in the Big Ten. Not so much anymore. I will say with Minnesota, they've racked up a couple wins since losing to North Carolina. They haven't beaten anybody. I'm not really sold on them. And Illinois looked really good last week when they beat Kansas. Kansas then lost to UNLV, and they don't look as good as they did before. It's the early season, preseason expectations. It's hard to judge how good a team is at this point, but I would agree with Pat that things look less. The schedule looks a little harder than it did in the preseason, but I wouldn't say by much.
But still, big picture, right? Getting out of the Big Ten East is still,
of course,
monumental, right? Like in the grand scheme of things, right? Like we can say it's maybe looking tougher, but it still won't even be comparable to what it's been the last 10 years or 9 years.
No doubt. That question a lot. Yeah. Is this the year we should have played Penn State and Michigan? No.
This is the year they should have played Michigan. 100%. 100. They would have beat Michigan.
They played Michigan the year when Brady Hoke, was on the hot seat, right? Like that was still the year to beat Michigan.
Getting them off the schedule is still.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. That's the good thing. But I would say if they played Michigan, they would have played them at home this year. Michigan does not have a quarterback. Michigan looks like a shell of itself from last year. They have a first-year head coach who, he's not been doing exceptionally well. I think this is a year Rutgers could have beat a ranked Michigan team even. Bottom.
That defense is still sick though at Michigan.
Sure.
Yeah. Right. I go back to this, and one thing, and I'm leaning toward the schedule is a good thing right now, and mostly because all that stuff, like I can't even think about Michigan State. Like I don't even know. It's so far down the line. You have no idea what that team's going to look like in 3 months, or what, for that matter, what Rutgers is going to look like at that point of the year. I mean, so much is going to happen then. But I do know that in 2 weeks, Washington's going to be here, and they are very beatable. Right. Like when you see they lose to Washington State, they just look very Yeah. So I'm just looking at this from strictly a programmatic standpoint. If they can get past Virginia Tech, who I believe is much more than I thought before the season started, they're going to play a Washington team against Washington, the national runner-up. That's right. And then I get it. You go on the road, Nebraska, better than you thought, but then you come back. Your backup quarterback, Wisconsin. Again, they don't look like Wisconsin, capital W, Wisconsin.
Right.
I think that to me, that's an opportunity for 5-1.
Wisconsin is missing the Jonathan Taylor, South Jersey running back. That's right. Like they don't have that stud running back that you think of with Wisconsin.
Right. And they play UCLA, who you cannot be said enough, stinks out loud. They are horrible.
Right.
Horrible.
Yeah, that was something I was watching Indiana go curb stomp them at the Rose Bowl. I was watching that game. Wow. And my wife goes in like, why are you watching this? I'm like, I don't know. It was, that was just a terrible performance. They look like they are headed to the bottom of the Big Ten in year one. That is one. You can put that as W, I think, or if you're doing the political thing, it was lean red. Now it's likely red, right? For Rutgers, not for.
It's great.
Yeah, it's good.
Great. It's funny too. It's funny too how Rutgers always ends up being someone else's homecoming game because you want to schedule the game that you're going to win on for homecoming.
Yeah.
Rutgers gets it right, getting UCLA on homecoming this year, right?
There you go. Yes.
Good point. Yeah. I do want to say with the schedule thing, what has happened now with Virginia Tech and Washington looking less good than we expected them is that Rutgers is going to have less chances to get a ranked win and by proxy get itself into the AP top 25. I know that doesn't really matter. You'd rather easier wins than bigger challenges or whatever. But I do think that this is a year Rutgers should and probably wants to break that drought because it's hanging over your head. You're the team with the longest drought of getting into the AP top 25 and the longest drought in beating a ranked team. You'd like to just get that off your back and win. And it's much.
If you win the next two, you're not ranked.
5-0 going to Nebraska should be ranked. I would.
I don't
think.
know.
4-0. Is that not enough?
4-0. Yes,
4-0, yeah.
4-0.
Is Virginia Tech? Are they going to have enough juice to get you a road win at Virginia Tech and a home win against Washington, who you just said, to be clear, are meh?
Meh.
You're 4-0. I know people start throwing you at the bottom of that thing. I think. Come on.
So if you come,
you're a voter. Will you not rank them at 4-0?
Yeah.
Again, it depends on what happens at the bottom of the top, the 20 to 25. I don't know. Some guys
4-0. You don't rank them. It's going to be an absolute. People are going to come drag you out of your apartment.
Is Syracuse 4-0? I think Syracuse has better wins right now than Rutgers, right? They beat Georgia Tech, who was ranked. A terrible ranking. I didn't rank Georgia Tech, but they were ranked. We'll see. We'll see how it looks. I think they'll have a chance. I'm just saying if they beat Nebraska on the road, they're going to get ranked fairly highly,
Yes.
My point is that
you could set up a ranked matchup in Lincoln, right? If it all goes well, two undefeated teams playing a huge game. Nebraska hasn't been great in a really long time. Rutgers hasn't been good in a really long time.
We're
could be a fascinating national storyline.
We're assuming Nebraska is going to be Illinois this weekend and Purdue, I think, the weekend after. Purdue stinks. They got demolished by Notre Dame. But we're making a lot of it. And we're also assuming here that Rutgers is going to beat Virginia Tech and Washington, which is not.
They're meh. They're meh.
Come on.
If Rutgers beats two meh teams, are they not meh? What's the madness?
But if they beat them decisively.
Beat them. You beat them. It's not. There's no mad win. College football. Come on.
All right. Come on. It's good. This is great.
It's good. All right. We got two more segments here, and then we're going to jump into questions. But we want to talk a little basketball, Brian. You've said I should put basketball on the thing. I'm not sure why. I guess we have a scrimmage at home. Is that what you saw? Dylan and Ace also autographing Topps cards. Tell us what's going on. Why don't you?
Sure. So over the weekend, I was at an event at Santiago Sports in Matawan. Ace and Dylan, who are both signed with Fanatics, showed up for it's called Hobby Rip Night, where they just get a bunch of sports cards, right? Packs, and they open them, and they fans can trade cards, and they have card battles where one was like, all right, let's see who has the tallest athletes. So they both open a pack, and whoever has the tallest athlete wins. Whatever. It's all just promoting Topps cards. Anyway, they didn't sign anything.
All right, team night.
They didn't sign anything because they're not allowed to. I saw one guy brought in a Rutgers basketball ball, couldn't get signed. Rutgers jersey couldn't get signed. They're exclusive signing rights with Fanatics.
Okay. Gotcha. So, that's why they can't sign it. Understand. Gotcha.
No, they weren't just being jerks. They weren't like, get that out of my face. I'm not signing that. They just couldn't sign it. Then things are ramping up soon. We got a local media day coming up. We have the Big Ten media day coming up next month. And then for fans, we have they have an open scrimmage, open to the public at the Rack, Saturday, September 28th. So everyone could come, and then they'll have a post-game on-court experience. The word meet and greet was not allowed to be used. I was told not to use that. Whatever. It's an on-court experience where fans can pay towards the night of the Raritan, and they can go and meet their favorite players. I am still not one. Huh?
You just said you can't use the word meet, and you just used the word meet.
Meet and greet.
You said you can't use greet. You said you can't use.
I can't use meet and greet.
You can use
one of the two. I was asked not to use the words meet and greet. I was asked.
You said you can go on the court and meet them. That's what you just said.
Well, you can go on the court and get a poster signed by your favorite players. I am not 100% sure if Ace and Dylan can sign them on account of the Fanatics deal. Right. I've not gotten a 100% answer either way. Anyway, the point is fans can get to see this team for the first time in an open scrimmage amongst each other before eventually playing, obviously, St. John's in a scrimmage in mid-October. I guess I bring this up to ask you guys. I don't know if you guys are going to be at the open scrimmage or not. If you are going to the open scrimmage, what do you guys want to see from your first look at the Rutgers men's basketball team of 2024-25?
It's kind of fascinating. This is like a one preseason where I think you want to see a lot, right? This is actually, and just how much chemistry this team's going to have early in the year, because it's going to matter. They're going to be assuming that I think people are buying tickets for the Vegas thing. So I guess that's now officially going to happen. I mean, they're going to play it. They're going to play a real teams before, mid-January. I mean, this is kind of an interesting setup. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious. I'm curious in a million things I want to see. I want to see how those two kids look, number one and number two, and the chemistry with the team. who's playing, who's getting minutes, I guess. I mean, I get it's a scrimmage against each other, so they're all going to play, but there's a lot. I mean, I think, Pat, right?
You can't say one thing for sure, but
yeah.
I'll try to laser in here, and let's go with last year. The buzzword was tempo. They're going to be a fast-paced team. Right. Let's see how this actually looks this year with strong guard play. And if it's still going to be a defensive team with what seems like a really great offensive potential. So I would like to see if, I don't know if you can judge that on a, inter-squad scrimmage, but we'll see. Tempo, and if it's still going to be a defensive juggernaut, or does that philosophy shift a little bit?
And you, what do you want to see?
A few things, but to narrow the list, like you guys said, I want to see the health. How does Dylan Harper look? Obviously, he's been kind of running around. How does he look? I think that's the biggest question. Tyson Acuff, I don't believe is going to play. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but it looked like, based on photos posted by assistant coach Marlon Smoke Williamson over the weekend, he was putting up shots, was no longer in a walking boot. So it seems like he's trending closer to returning and is following that timeline of 3 months that would put him ready for the start of the season to a T. So that's positive. I'd like to see Emmanuel Ogbole. All eyes are on the center after Rutgers did not get one in the transfer portal. How does he look defensively and offensively? How does he have chemistry with Dylan Harper and the guards, like Pat said? And can he block shots and clog the lane as effectively as Cliff Omori did? And I'm looking to see the shooters. How are PJ Hayes, Zach Martini, these guys that are coming in to provide the three-point shooting Rutgers has not had in a long time, save for, Cam Spencer and Ron Harper Jr. How do they look? How do they mix in with the offense, and just how do they look defensively as well? And again, it's going to be almost impossible to take any big picture takeaways from these scrimmages. I've watched these guys go against each other in practice, and over the summer for 5 minutes. And it's kind of like when Greg Schiano talks about the offensive line, it's all kind of a big mush. And it's hard to really tell what is what's happening. But I think it'll be a good, fun day for fans to kind of get a glimpse and a good feel for what they should expect this season. I think a lot of them are a little nervous after Blue Ribbon ranked them the 15th team in the Big Ten. So I think this scrimmage might help kind of ease some nerves after people read that.
That's still crazy to me. That is still just nuts. Like, I don't get it.
A highly respected publication, right?
That's what makes me worried. Yeah, it's like if it's it's like, yeah, it's
bizarre.
How do you get 2 NBA lottery picks and think they're not going to finish in the top? I mean, that's just inexplicable, right? I
mean, there's 5 guys on the court. There's only 3 guys returning from last year's team, which, granted, was not a very good team.
Right.
There's a lot of question marks. Listen, I don't think they're going to finish 15th. I think obviously that's a few steps too far, but I can certainly see the areas for concern with this team, right? Like Dylan and Ace are, as far as I'm concerned, pretty close to being sure things. I'm not sure about the center. I'm not sure about the shooting. I'm not sure.
You're sure about Jermaine Williams, right?
I'm sure about
Zach Martini. I'm pretty sure about that.
I'm sure about Jeremiah Williams being a bit of a distributor and being able to get to the hole. He's not a great shooter. How does that impact the backcourt? Zach Martini had, a good career.
A good shooter. Right?
Yeah, he's a good shooter. He had a good career at Princeton. Yeah. Is he going to be able to go up and play in the physicality of the Big Ten? I don't know that. I've never seen it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So we were talking about rankings in football, right? Wouldn't you think Rutgers would be a hot preseason top 25 pick, right? Like,
sure,
people want to get them in the poll early.
Sure.
Based on this buzz, and then to see that they barely cracked the top 25 of the conference is insane.
Sure. I don't have a vote in basketball, but I would have to think that they'll get at least a handful of votes.
Yeah.
If not, I don't think they'll be ranked very highly, to be honest with you. I think if they do get ranked, it'll be
20s.
20. Yeah, in the 20s. Exactly. But again, if they're 15th in the Big Ten, I don't think they'll,
right.
I don't know.
Right.
That certainly did. That was the first thing I've seen in a while that made me just stop and check 3 or 4 times to make sure I wasn't misreading it.
It's an outlier. It's an outlier poll. Could use that a lot in November. Just toss that result out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe it'll be a hanging Chad.
Hanging Chad. All right, let's jump into some questions because this is very significant news. Anyone who listened to our podcast last week knows that Brian went after one of our best and favorite listeners. He attacked Sue from Somerset. He went all in on Sue from Somerset, demanded, because the woman had the audacity to think that the Rutgers game should be on a station in New Jersey during. Instead, she had to watch the audacity. She had to watch 15 stations with Penn State. She was angry. She was asking us a question, and Brian told her to walk to the game. Essentially, wanted her to risk her life down Route 18. Listen to it if you haven't heard it. It was over the top, demanding that Sue and Pat. Sue came right back at him. This is great. I'm going to read it. Sue's response to this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, skip ahead 30 seconds. But here you go. Sue from Somerset. Well, begins. I just love it. It's like you're getting lectured by your grandma here. It just feels great. I'm glad I provided 5 minutes of entertainment for the three of you on today's podcast, since the Rutgers Rant is such a bastion of journalism. Woo! Taking us down.
What a zinger.
We're the second best podcast in New Jersey. Sue is I can't blame her. Bashing New Jersey, I thought it'd be a good place to publicize, embarrass both Big Ten and Xfinity. So Brian wants me to go to the game in person and walk there or go to the bar to watch. This comes the impossibly hard to believe part, but true. I'd invite you to attend, but I had to turn it down because sad Hulk song here, David Banner. I have 2 knees waiting for replacement. One on October 15th. So walking is tough. Let alone navigating around Rutgers football games. So there. Right. Good. Then she says, great podcast. Haven't laughed that long in a hard time. Thanks. And I may, and this is great, I may take Brian up on his offer to buy me a ticket and pick me up, but probably not until next season. That's going to happen. You're going to take Sue to a game when her knees, Sue, get your knees cleaned out, get it fixed, and you're going to be back next year sitting in the stands with Brian. That's absolutely going to happen. Great email. Brian, your response.
Well, first of all, thanks, Sue, for being a great sport about this. She had every right to be very mean to me, and I'm grateful that she took it easy on me. 2, I will absolutely take her to any non-conference Rutgers football game, and I'll buy her a ticket on the 50-yard line against Miami of Ohio. I would gladly do that. I will say I cannot afford a Rutgers basketball ticket this season, so I want to be clear that this offer is only for Rutgers football. Listen, I'm sorry about her knees. There's Ubers. She can get to. I'm just joking. Just joking.
What if she's got to walk up the stands?
We have a hard enough time walking up those stairs. Come on.
You see me dragging my ass up after post game. I mean, look at me. Got
I'm just
2
joshing.
good knees, sort of.
I'm just joshing. Thank you to Sue. And there'll just be a warning to anybody I ever bully on the podcast again. They will come back at me. So I will refrain from being the podcast bully. I'll leave that up to you guys to kind of find the next target for us.
Good for you, Sue. Thank you for listening. All right. A bunch of other questions. And I like this one since Eric Orlando on the Twitter wants to know, with the latest conference realignment in the news this week and Rutgers playing an ACC team, it made me wonder whether Rutgers would have been a better fit in the ACC. While we're lucky to be in the Big Ten, Rutgers academically, culturally, and geographically seems like a better fit in the ACC. No, that would be my response. Pat, you look like you're like kind of swayed, but
I'm a meh response here because I think he does have a point about the culture and the geography, but you're absolutely right. Like he's right. Obviously, Rutgers is lucky to be in the Big Ten, but right, yeah, basketball, culturally, geography, he's got a great point there. So I see it. I can see it both ways.
Yeah. Geography's
dead. Yeah.
No, it's not, I know it's dead, but
in the season that Stanford is playing in the ACC, right? So that's
still
the all important geographical factor. It's crazy.
It is nice to think that Rutgers could sell the Jersey Shore and actually play in a conference with teams that are somewhat along the same coastline, right? Aside from Maryland. And I think Maryland would have loved to stay in the ACC if Rutgers joined them, right? I think Maryland fans are still upset they left the ACC. This is kind of, I don't know. I think it would kind of be worse for Rutgers because they won't get all the TV money. But as far as on-court and on-field product, I think the ACC might have been a better fit. Rutgers certainly would have not been, had their heads bashed in, week out in the ACC in football at the very least. Basketball is a different story, though.
Rutgers might be a conference champ in the ACC this year with the way that league looks.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm still going with no. on this. Very simple answer. Rutgers is a better fit in the Big Ten because the Big Ten's a better conference, and the institutions or matches for a million other reasons. Flagship universities and big, and look at all. Besides that, I mean, do you think you'd call up North Carolina tomorrow? It's like, hey, we'd like you in the Big Ten. They'd be like, well, we're a better fit in the ACC. No, thanks. No, they're going to go, yes, I'd like to be in the Big Ten. That's what they're going to say. I mean, and they're trying. I mean, that's what's going to happen. The ACC is doomed. You heard it here first. You didn't hear it first. All right, that email is not that text. That tweet is not the biggest second guess we got. This is great. An email by Kyle Flood. Food for thought. Watching Texas versus UT San Antonio game and wondering how all those fans so eager to run Kyle Flood out of town because he lacked an FBF pedigree while mocking him for using Shianoisms like family, and we want to go 1-0 this week. Who would have ever done that? Think now, knowing that he is the offensive coordinator at the number one college football program in the nation. I guess he's got the pedigree now. He did put the texter did put LOL in parentheses, so I think this is a little tongue in cheek, but man, I get a good laugh at that. I was like, there are a couple other things that happened there under Kyle Flood that made people want to run him out of town. The absolute erosion of recruiting, academic and discipline standards. And what I can only describe as the stupidest college scandal in modern history. Those things happen as well. Thoughts?
I heard he was at Baylor the other weekend asking a professor to change Arch Manning's grade so he could play this weekend. That was the rumor flying around Austin. It helps to have two of the top 15 quarterbacks in the country and an offensive line that's getting $50,000 just to show up on campus, and talented wide receivers and a third string running back that's better than most teams. That certainly helps Kyle Flood's pedigree. There's no doubt about that.
And I mean,
I'm not calling the plays.
Right.
Yeah, that's
right. Yeah. Sark's got a pretty good offensive pedigree himself.
Right.
Hey, look, Kyle Flood is maybe the most successful, not the most, but one of the most successful graduates of the Nick Saban, come be my graduate assistant, make $20,000 a year and rehabilitate your image school for coaches, right? He went to Alabama, absolutely, won a national title, and now no one remembers that he changed his grades and had a ton of crimes committed by members of his roster. Everyone kind of forgets that when you win a national title with Alabama. So
he has rehabilitated his image in a remarkable way. I will give him credit. I'm curious to see what happens if he's going to want to get another D1 job someplace. I mean, what's his next step? He might just be happy. I'm sure he's making a very nice living. You're winning all these games. He's well respected down there. Again, offensive coordinator. But when you're offensive coordinator for, the Manning, the next Manning child, you're going to have chances. So I'll be very fascinated to see what's going to happen with Kyle Flood in the next couple of years. But that's somebody else's problem. All right, a few more questions. We already addressed the Michigan Penn State question, whether we should be playing. Rutgers fans should wish they were playing them this year. All right, here we go. What's the update on Pat Hobbs? Oh boy. What's going on with gymnastics? Do we have any information on what Rutgers is doing to turn the athletic department into profitability? All right, we'll skip that part, but let's do the update on gymnastics. Brian, the only person talking about this is the governor, which is kind of fascinating.
It's something, isn't it? Yes.
It's something.
The interim athletic director has still not spoken. The president of the university has declined multiple requests for comment from us. And the governor of the state is going on his monthly radio show and ending the show with his comments about this scandal. It really is something. Updates, really, the only update from last week was that Governor Phil Murphy talked about it once again. My understanding is the external investigation is ongoing. No real big steps there, kind of still gathering things together. From what I understand, no interviews have been conducted yet. I have no real update on the internal investigation pertaining to Pat Hobbs. And as far as I understand, Umi Salim Beasley remains the head coach of the Rutgers gymnastics program, which really day by day is really sticking in the craw of the former gymnasts and their parents who really, really want to see her punished to some extent, whether that's suspended or put on leave for the duration of the investigation or flat out fired. Their calls for action have not been answered. And I would guess given that we're at this point, she will not be her status will not be changed at any point until after the external investigation is concluded and they have their findings to kind of decide either way. So that's the update, and I don't expect much movement anytime. It's certainly not this week. I would be surprised with that.
When does the season start for them? Is there like an early? Do they have a scrimmage too, where she's going to have to be there? I mean, she's lawyered up. Certainly, I get it. They've already investigated, so she's got that on some level. Rutgers did an internal investigation, as flawed as it is, for obvious reasons. So she has that to hang her hat on, the fact that she has not been suspended. That said, and this season's going to start, right? I mean, it's going to be kind of weird to have her sitting there coaching this.
Sure. To be clear, I don't know if they did a full-blown internal investigation into the gymnastics program or they just looked into each individual case that went through ethics and compliance. I don't know the answer either way, but my understanding is they just looked into each case individually. And now obviously they have the internal investigation into Pat Hobbs' inappropriate consensual relationship, which could be also into the gymnastics program. We don't have much clarity there. To answer your question, they do have inter squad scrimmages in which they kind of figure out lineups and all that stuff. That's kind of happening over the next month or two. Their season starts in earnest in January. So there's still a few months there. But again, if you're going to make a change, you probably don't want to make it in December, a month before the season starts. But yeah, I mean, certainly there's got to be some elephant in the room. People read this stuff. It's certainly being talked about within the program. But they're all kind of in a holding pattern waiting for the external investigation to conclude, as far as I understand. And again, based on the original timeline, that won't happen until at least November. And again, who knows with these things? It might drag on longer. It might not. We'll have to kind of just wait and see.
And the other interesting part about this, there seems to be no urgency still to hire a search firm. And I can just tell you, internally, from Pat Hobbs, people have moved on. I mean, it's just kind of I just get the sense they've kind of accepted that they may or may not know the entire story of what happened. And they're just not, there's just not a lot of people going, wringing their hands about what a terrible thing that has happened here. For the most part, everyone just kind of like 48 hours like, oh my God, put their head down and went back to work. I mean, that's just the sense I got. And I think the fact that the season had arrived right as this was going on made it much easier for a lot of people to just kind of like, okay, Ryan's the boss. Ryan Passari is the boss now. That Pat Hobbs is gone. Doesn't really change what I have to do, what my job is at this point. I do find it interesting, though, that they're certainly, by all accounts, and I'm going to write about this week, taking their time on this. I mean, that Ryan Passari could be the interim AD for a while, because certainly it does not seem like, and President Holly, based on his own, he could be gone, within a year. If he's going to make the hire, there's a lot we don't know. But the point being, that Ryan Passari could be the interim AD for a while.
There's a lot we don't know, and it would be nice if someone would come out publicly and answer some questions about the situation. But who knows when that will happen?
Who knows? All right. Any other questions we got here? I think that's all the good ones, and saving some for later in the week that are specific. If you ask specific questions about Virginia Tech, I have saved those. We addressed the Big Ten schedule. We let Sue from Somerset have her say and scold you and the rest of us for our lacking journalistic standards. What else we got, fellas? Anything?
Oh, how could I almost forgot this. I don't think I brought this up in the last pod. I actually might have. Gia Gurman, first game back. Game winner against Wisconsin. Yeah. I brought this up.
No, wait, we did. Do we bring it up? I don't think we had that.
I think we did. Anyway, just to refresh the memory, Gia Gurman, her first game back from her 3-game suspension we did bring this up. But anyway, for fighting against UMass, first game back in the 80th minute, she scores a game winner against Wisconsin to give Rutgers a win in their first Big Ten game of the season. So she helped motivate the ladies off the field, and when she gets back on, she rode the wave and helped them to a 4th straight win. There are 9 goals scored, 0 conceded over the last 4 games since the incident. It's kind of like when a manager comes out and yells with an umpire and gets ejected. Almost the same exact thing. Just this one had a little bit more violence to it. That's all.
She didn't punctuate the celly. She didn't cold cock someone during the goal celebration. No,
she didn't call her girls savages in the box and all that stuff that Aaron Boone did that one time. And I believe field hockey won this weekend, and they are ranked. So they are continue to be kind of the beacon of the fall sports calendar. Of all the change and tumult in the Rutgers athletic department, you could always count on Meredith Civico and the field hockey team to get some good results, be in the competition in the Big Ten, and kind of lead the way, them and the women's soccer team. So
there you
men's
go.
Men's soccer lost, but they did not get a red card. They had a stretch of 4 straight games where they had a guy sent off. This weekend ended the streak. So they might be losing, but at least they're not getting guys kicked out of the game.
Wow.
That's a step in the right direction.
Wow. Okay.
I guess the only other thing, we'll talk about this in the Virginia Tech preview too, but what did Rutgers do on this bye week? We'll figure that out today at the press conference. Health of the players, all very important topics.
You're not going to figure that out. You're not going to figure out the health of the players.
We'll figure it out.
I can't wait. My favorite part.
We'll give a good perception of the general health of the team. Is it better than it was the last 2 weeks? How
are you going to phrase? Let's discuss. How are you going to phrase this question to Greg Shannon? Because you change it every time. You get the same answer every time. Just curious
I'm not going to even think about a specific player in this situation. I'm going to say, how is the general health of the team after the bye week?
Okay, that's good. Greg, hypothetically, if you were to discuss the health of your team in relation to a team that is more injuries, I'm kidding. All right, good. Look forward to that. Look forward to the press conference. Again, we'll be back later in the week to make our predictions, play our fun little game that may or may not be fun, and talk Virginia Tech in detail. Until then, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.